Hi, my name is Prakash and welcome to the part 8 of video series How to Use Your Laptop to set up a Hyper-V test lab and test out SQL Server 2019 multi-subnet always-on build. In this particular video, we'll talk about how do we configure Windows domain controller. So we'll use Windows Server 2019 for that, and so let's get going. So far we have covered the basic concept of what we are planning to do. We are looking to create our own Hyper-V installation on our Windows laptop with minimal changes to the existing laptop configuration. We want to create a VHD and we want to boot from that VHD and set up Hyper-V and configure the networks, configure the Hyper-V, and finally install domain controller and then configure a Windows cluster of 3 nodes with multiple subnets, and then install SQL 2019 always on setup on it. So far, we have covered up to setting up the virtual router, which covered multi-subnet network. Today, I'll cover how to configure Windows domain controller. So as you can see, domain controller, we want to create a DNS, which is already 10.10.10.2. We decided when we were creating the virtual router, we set up the DNS there, and that's what we'll be using in this. Default gateway would be 10.10.10.1. This is the same gateway coming from the virtual router we created. All our setup should be using that, and by default we'll be using the Google DNS 8888. Before we start, let me tell you a bit about myself. My name is Prakash. I work in SS&C Advent. I have been in the SQL Server field for more than 20 years now. I run a SQL Server consultancy. So please visit my blog sqlfeatures.com, where you can find the link for the rest of the other articles if you're not able to locate them on YouTube. And then connect me on LinkedIn and tweet me for any questions you might have. All right, let's get going. We're going to start as an administrator. At this point in your Hyper-V, you should have a 19 router up and running. Let's open our script. Go to SQL Setup, see SQL Setup script. Part 8. This you can find in GitHub link, which is there in the description box. And so as usual, we'll do the first round. Let's select the code, populate for unattended install, where we want to change 2 names. Then come here. This exit is there, so by mistake, rather than select and run, you did an F5, still the script will exit and not execute rest of the steps. So we want to create a VM name, W19AD, passwords, OSD, parent path. You have all the steps, so I'm just going to select it and run. To understand more on this code, please watch the part 6 where I explained how to create the parent VM. There we talked more in depth about each of these steps. Now we're creating a new VM, setting the number of processors, setting the memory. The default, it's connecting to LAN 10, right? So, and then we are adding integration. And so our domain controller is not directly connecting to the internet. In this case, we are connecting to the 10 network. Let's run the selections. Basic settings all done. Start VM and connect. So it should take, as usual, about 2 minutes. It won't prompt you for anything because your parent virtual hard disk already configured with Windows 19. I'll be back when it's done. Our Windows is ready. As usual, one time step. We need to select this, so it's a bigger screen. So let's minimize this. Back to our script, and here are the steps. We are connecting it using WinRM session. Okay, so let's run the get net adapter, and you should see one network and Ethernet. So we're gonna rename it as usual. And we want to mark it as 10.10.10.1. So this is our default gateway, which was for virtual router we just created in last video. And this is our DNS address. So once I run that, you can see we're gonna change the network interface for IF index 4, change name from Ethernet to LAN 10. Perfect. Disable IPv6 as usual. So we can see it's disabled, and this is the new network IP address. This is not the 10.10.10.1 what we expect, right? So by default, Hyper will give network IP on its own. We want to change it to 10.10.10.2 as IP address, and default gateway should be the one we set here as default gateway. So let's run this. So we are adding a DNS client server address 8888. That's Google's DNS server. So with that, let's restart the network adapter. Let's validate the network settings. Look good. Let's do some basic checks. We want to know the host name is Windows 1980. Ping is working for Google. Our network is 10.10.10 network. It's able to connect to Google. That's a good sign. Okay, now as you can see, ping to 10.10.10.1 is working. 20 is working, so it's able to connect to virtual router, and routing is working fine. Let's check. Let's connect to the host itself, right? To this machine, this VM. Right now, within the VM, we have connected with a connection. We're connected to 1980, but can it connect to its own VM? So you'll find it's failing, right? Because when we configure the virtual setup, let me start the Hyper-V. When we configure this virtual switch managers LAN 2010, we did not configure the settings to it. Let me show you. Right click on the network icon, click open network, go to Ethernet, click change adapter options. We go to LAN 20, click properties. Make sure this is set to 2021. Click OK, OK. And at this point, the internet should be accessible. Virtual router should be able to access the network. And as you can see, it's working fine. So it can connect to the host, but we don't want this functionality because there's no need for host to be connecting. It's just to show you how the network will, as long as your gateway is pointing to 10.10.10.1, you'll be able to connect, right? So let's go back, right click, properties, and let's make sure that we disable it because this host already has its own gateway. That's why I don't want to set it up. At this point, we're all good. Domain is working as expected. Right, so now let's go ahead and configure the domain controller, okay? So we want to check if domain exists with the name. We are trying to configure SQL features.local. It says domain does not exist, so perfect. Now we're installing these three different tools, right? Windows features, AD domain services, DNS, and GPMC. I'll take probably another 5 to 7 minutes to install all this. So once it's done, I'll be back. Okay, so I'm back. All three tools are installed, as you can see. Everything looks good. So let's go with the step 2. We are defining domain name as SQL features.local. For this particular video tutorial, I would suggest to use the same way. So you are making minimal changes and rest of the steps are go as usual. Once you're done with one round of creating all the VMs and everything is working, then you can come back, recreate them with the new settings and make the domain as what you prefer and other passwords and all that, okay? So NetBIOS name, we are employing run command, so it will import ADDS module. Once this done, remember that we are running this command on W1980 while we are on our host, just connected there and running it. So I'm going to install ADD for us. Let me run it while we discuss it. So we want to install default domain mode. We are keeping in Windows 12. If you prefer, you can keep the latest one. Domain name already populated here, SQL features local. NetBIOS name is SQL features, Windows 12, true. So no reboot, you will just install it, basic. And then after that, we are waiting for system to restart. So what will happen, that system will reboot after that automatically. So wait for about 10 minutes. After this, we'll do a reboot. Let's do some basic configuration for domain controller, and then once it's back, we'll be connecting it again. System is ready to boot in. We have waited for some time. Let's connect the session again, and we are back to connected to 1980. We'll create some organizational units. We want to call them, use it as it is. Domain admins, SQL service accounts, as well as DB host. Run selection, then this is some basic stuff, SQL features, DC. The user would be HV admin, will be using, which will be the domain admin in this case. and this is the password. And then we'll be creating the new AD users with that. So this command completed. Let's run that. We created our basic user, then we create a basic group member as a domain admin. We create a new group, SQL DBA support, for example, where all your DBA team members can have the access, and you grant that group as access. As long as you add this group as a SQL sysadmin, anybody part of this Windows group would be able to access. And we'll be creating a primary zone. Wait, now we'll be creating a resource for the reverse lookup. We did it for the host name, what we created with. Then let's add it again, and that should be it. Let's make sure we are checking the net IP. It looks good. Let's do some Google ping. Okay, it's still working. Fantastic. If I connect to 10.10.1, the router is working perfectly fine. 3, we should have an issue as we expected. We removed the entry so it's not pointing to the virtual router, so that's expected. Let's see, we can connect to SQL features.local now. So let's run it. SQL features is working, pointing to our domain server 10.10.10.do. Perfect. At this point, let's restart the computer and we should be good. Okay, let me add force switch. When we are rebooting it on a console, we need to make sure use force so it works. There you go. So mine, it's rebooting. This is it. At this point, our domain controller is all configured. Now we can start creating the new VMs, install SQL Server, and configure always on. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching the video. If you find video was useful for you, please click the like button so that YouTube algorithm can share it with others. I produce SQL Server related video, typically try to do one video a week. So if you are interested in knowing what coming next, please subscribe and click on the notification bell. If you have any questions, please note it down in the comments section, or any requests for the future videos. Look forward to hear from you. Thank you.